John Nissen. I chair the Arctic Methane Analysis Group. We are about to address the government on this.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit, John?
I'll talk a bit closer here. Yeah. It's about risk management, and the IPCC is supposed to look at the high impact consequences, which even if they think they're low probability. Now we think, our group thinks that there's a high probability that Arctic ice cap is melting away because we can't see anything stopping it. And if that happens as quickly as the observations and best models predict, it's many times faster than we IPCC are assuming, and it's past the tipping point, and it invalidates practically every conclusion of the IPCC report, and it makes adaptation to the worst consequences of climate change impossible, absolutely impossible. So we've got accelerating meltdown. The sea ice is in a vicious cycle of warming and melting, which is unstoppable.
Could you move to a question?
Yes, I'm asking whether Dave is aware of this, because there's nothing in the IPCC report to tell him. I'm hoping his advisors have told him about this, because I've been telling the advisors, and the advisors say they are aware of the situation, but I've seen nothing written. The sea ice is in a vicious cycle. Everything is in non-linear mode. We've got accelerated meltwater discharge from Greenland ice sheet, causing the sea level to rise exponentially. There's methane discharge from the Arctic rising exponentially. The climate extremes that we've been observing recently have resulted from Arctic warming, not the hiatus in global warming. It's from the Arctic warming. And now we are entering a global food crisis.
Sorry, John, do you mind if I just move to Chris Fields? I'm sure Chris is very aware of this.
I want to know whether David has heard of any of this, because he ought to have. This is the real big problem we're facing in France.
Do you mind if we go to Chris first? Because people on the IPCC will not have been unaware of this debate in the literature. I think it might be interesting if Chris gives us a view on that, and then we can get a word from the secretary.
Absolutely nothing
okay?
in the working group reports that we've been examining.
Absolutely, but they will have been unaware. Chris?
So, Chapter 6 of the IPCC Working Group 1 contribution to the Air 5 is on carbon cycle and other feedbacks. And it assesses all that's in the scientific literature on feedbacks from carbon cycle, including changes in biome locations, changes in biome vitality, consequences of permafrost melting, including both CO2 and methane feedbacks. You know, one of the things that's quite challenging in the scientific literature, something I highlighted, is that the model information, the experimental evidence tells us what most likely outcomes are, but they often don't provide a very clear picture of what these tail risks are. And that's why it's so important that we consider a risk management framing as we move forward based on both what's in the scientific literature and on the full range of possible consequences that go from that. As I said before, IPCC is uniquely positioned to provide a clear picture of what we know and what we don't know in the scientific literature, but the decision-making process has to recognize the limits to what we know and make decisions that address these high consequence but low probability possibilities.
So can you just give us, in brief, Chris, a reason why this potentially very significant but sort of very long tail event, why this isn't highlighted in Working Group 1 or Working Group 2?
Well, it is highlighted. It's one of the important carbon cycle feedbacks that's detailed in Chapter 6. I don't have the page number in front of me, but it is an important, and I can tell you that based on my recollection, the numbers amount to some years of current fossil emissions from the industrial sector, and it's an important lever on the climate outcomes in the 21st century.
Secretary of State, perhaps we can ask you for a view. I mean, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Climate Change has had presentations on this subject. Are you aware of it?
Yes, I was.
Right, thank you very much. Let's move on. Okay, question
that is that there is now serious underestimation of the sensitivity of the planet to what we are doing to it. And if that serious underestimation is validated, then the 2 degrees that is being predicted from the comparison project is probably going to look at more like 5. In other words, it's an underestimation of over 60% in the effects on climate of the emissions that we are making.
Just be clear, is this coming from the model set, or is this coming from real-world observations?
This is coming from real-world observation, the paleoclimate analysis that we've been doing for the last 8 years. Absolutely spot on. And validated by the Director of the World Climate Research Programme. If that higher level for Earth system sensitivity is taken into account, then the 2 degrees becomes even more difficult to achieve. So my question here is, what are the implications of higher sensitivity for the whole outputs from work groups 2 and 3 and for our political decision making as we go towards Paris?
Well, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but what you just said is a really good argument for taking a risk management approach, considering the full range of possible outcomes and recognizing that in many cases we can't assign very precise probabilities to particular outcomes, but understanding that that range is there and that different individuals with different values will approach this with different amounts of emphasis. But I think that awareness of the full range of values is the only justifiable starting point.
Would you like to come in?
Yes. First of all, you're right. So this is something which has to be taken into account, but it's not just the climate sensitivity. I would call it the social or the economic sensitivity. Because I would like to make an argument here, which is from my point of view, it's not in the report, but it seems to me this needs to be explored now. It's about the carbon pricing. So everybody could agree that carbon prices are important. You have to set the carbon prices right. But I just mentioned that you can see in the graphs that up to now there is no leapfrogging, for example. And some countries, in particular the low-income countries, are very much concerned about carbon pricing. And even the middle-income countries are very much concerned about the carbon pricing because of several reasons. Not just because of economic efficiency, because, for example, distributional issues. Some countries might perceive this as the highest risk. They might agree with me and say, okay, the average costs might be low, but what about the distributional implications of carbon pricing on the low-income households in my country? But then you have to make sure that you design the carbon price in a way which is not regressive, which tries to avoid social unrest and such kind of things. What I'm saying is, what we are discussing here are institutions which are resilient enough, adaptive enough, where we can learn from the experience and we can adjust this. What I'm saying is we have always said as economists, carbon pricing, we should do this. But this is a very, very complicated thing. It has to be embedded in the pre-existing tax system. It has to be embedded in the public finance system. So all these things has to be decided in an appropriate way. And this is one thing which worries me a little bit. And we have, as economists, to do much more work on this. So how can we combine this with tax reduction, with debt reduction, with infrastructure investment? From my point of view, this can be done. But if we do this, so this is a way how to overcome underlying trade-offs, and this is as important as taking into account the climate sensitivity, because the impact of a higher climate sensitivity is quite clear. We need a much more rapid emission reduction. But this then refers to the sensitivity of our underlying economic systems, our social systems, and our institutions. And here I agree with Sam. Here we have to do much more work in the future within the IPCC to come up with much more ex-post policy analysis, but also to come up with much more design options which are relevant for the